Picture a stream in the Arizona desert that dried up. For 100 years, water flowed only just after it rained. The rest of the time, it was dust. Then one day, incredibly, water slowed and stayed. Grass sprouted, trees rooted. And what did the neighbors think? Actually, they were furious. This is a story about magic water. But to understand how it appeared, we first need to talk about how we accidentally broke the planet's plumbing system. For hundreds of years, we've been moving water off the land as fast as possible. We've drained most wetlands, leveed rivers, pumped groundwater, paved floodplains. We've dried out the soil with industrial agriculture, overgrazing, clear-cutting forests. We've treated water like a commodity or a threat, something to control. And it worked, sort of. But collectively, these activities have degraded 75% of land on Earth. We're now rushing so much water off our continents, it's causing more sea level rise than melting glaciers. I call this the Great Drying. Here's what we didn't understand. Water and life are partners. When we kill life in the soil, water doesn't linger. When water disappears, more life dies. It's a vicious cycle, one that's playing a big part in the drought, floods, and fires that we're seeing everywhere. And to make matters worse, our broken water system is amplifying climate change. But the way I look at it, this is actually good news, because it means that we have agency. Climate change can feel overwhelming and hopeless, but recognizing the importance of water and living systems empowers us to fight climate change within our own communities. We broke it, but we can fix it. Back to that improbable stream in Arizona. Outside of Tucson, ranchers Valor Clark and Josiah Austin saw that their land was sick. Rain didn't soak into the soil, but roared through washes, disappearing within a few hours. The dirt was baked hard, nothing grew. It seemed wrong, so Clark researched the history of the land. When settlers arrived, they had cut the forests, they had overgrazed cattle, dried everything out. Clark and Austin had heard stories about how indigenous people build small barriers in dry stream beds to slow water. So they tried it. A few rocks here, some logs pounded there, nothing fancy, just enough to catch sediment and give water time to sink underground. Then they waited. Slowly, the soil became spongy. The dry wash started flowing, first for a few days after rain, then weeks. Within a few monsoon seasons, it became a year-round stream in the desert where there hadn't been one in living memory. Scientists released endangered fish into the stream, and then one morning, a bear came to cool off. Paradise, right? It was for Clark and Austin, and the bear, but not everyone thought so. People downstream were livid. They accused Clark and Austin of stealing their water. It seems logical. Water is scarce in the desert, more for Clark and Austin, more for fish and bears, equals less for the neighbors, right? Except they were completely wrong. Laura Norman, a physical scientist, heard about this oasis and she was intrigued. She measured the stream flow above and below the barriers, she tracked water underground, analyzed stored carbon, and when she released her findings, jaws dropped. The barriers hadn't reduced the stream flow, they'd increased it by 28%. Magic water. Here's the critical factor. Water is not just a physical system, it's also biological. It needs life to work. When you slow water on degraded land, you recreate conditions for life to return. And life, tiny animals, fungi, soften hard soil into a sponge. That sponge absorbs floods, which then releases water slowly to streams during the dry season. Bigger animals help water too. Prairie dogs and other diggers create burrows that water travels underground. Beavers build dams that slow water, refilling aquifers, creating fire breaks, reducing flooding downstream. But the power of life is even bigger. In grade school, you probably learned that rain comes from ocean evaporation. That's only part of the story. In fact, 40% of rain, on average, over continents actually comes from soil and plants. Because plants don't just drink water, they breathe it back into the air. A single mature tree can release hundreds of gallons a day. Plants also cast bacteria and fungi up into the sky, giving their vapor scaffolding on which to form rain. That waters more plants, which make more rain. So life not only feeds the rain, it seeds the rain. It's a complex, beautiful, virtuous cycle, and we broke it. Fortunately, the fix is modular and cumulative. Every little bit helps, like Clark and Austin's stream. And the more areas rehydrated, the bigger the benefit. Consider the large forests that still stand, like the Amazon. Exhalations from these millions of trees flow into atmospheric currents, sowing rain across continents. The Amazon and Congo forests deliver rain to Texas and the American Midwest. The forests of Southeast Asia supply the Balkans and China. These are rivers in the sky. But since 1990, we've cut down forests equal to half the area of the United States. And scientists recently discovered that 3/4 of the declining rain in the Amazon's dry season isn't from climate change. It's from deforestation. We're not just killing trees, we're killing rain thousands of miles away. And creating rain is not all water and life can do. Healthy systems help regulate Earth's temperature. In the blazing hot city of Phoenix, Laura Norman found that slowing water creates evaporative cooling of up to 3 degrees Celsius. That's the difference between killing heat and survivable heat. Plants consume the sun's energy for photosynthesis instead of letting it heat the ground. Their vapor forms clouds that reflect heat. And when vapor turns to rain high in the sky, it releases heat, some of which radiates to space. Together, water and life are Earth's natural cooling system. We turned it off, and now we're sweating. We absolutely must get off fossil fuels, but we also need to restore Earth's cooling system. But here's the good news. It's already happening. In Arizona, Clark and Austin didn't wait for permission. They just started with their little rocks and patience. And it worked. Now ranchers and state governments across the American West and northern Mexico are doing the same thing. Elsewhere, people in the Mesopotamian marshes of Iraq are living with water, as their ancestors have for 9,000 years. In Peru, rotational grazing is healing grasslands. Selective logging is keeping forests standing in Laos. The Seattle Public Utility is preventing urban flooding by restoring a creek's microbiome. People in India are using their ancestors' techniques to slow water and store it underground. Urban areas in China are removing pavement to create sponge cities. And in Guyana, agroforestry mimics ecosystems. This is the global slow water movement. It's local, distributed, community-driven. I think of its practitioners as water detectives because they approach water with curiosity rather than trying to control it. They taught me that it's impossible to optimize nature for one thing, like storing carbon, because nature is a web greater than the sum of its parts. Tapping the power of complex living communities, the detectives are creating oases that don't burn, cooling neighborhoods, restarting the rain. And the best part? These aren't billion-dollar megaprojects. These are things that people can do themselves. So here's what I want you to do. When you go home, think like a water detective. Look for clues. Why is that creek 20 feet below? Are those willow trees? Where's water pooling? Then ask yourself, what does water want to do here? Maybe it wants to reclaim a wetland, meander, expand into its floodplain again. So give water what it wants. You can start small. Plant a rain garden of native plants. Talk to your city council about depaving, bioswales rather than bigger storm drains. Support land conservation in your watershed and indigenous land rights. Because here's what I learned from 15 years of following the water. Sooner or later, water always wins. The question is whether we go with the flow and win too, or fight against it and lose. We've spent hundreds of years treating water like a commodity or a crop to control. It's time to treat it as the friend and collaborator it's always been. The Great Drying, we caused it, which means we can reverse it, starting now, starting where you live. Thank you.